and the rest of her estate would be going to the church. How much was the estate? Oh, just a small, humble $9 million.
What?
Yeah.
What it is, guys? It's your boy BlastphamousHD, and today we're here to check out extreme stories of revenge that went way too far. If you guys don't watch the original video, the link's in the description down below.
Revenge rarely solves your problems, but boy does it feel good to get your own back. You want to steal my lunch? Then enjoy the sick burn I'm about to leave on this sticky note, except not all revenge is plotted equally. While I'm a huge fan of passive-aggressive messages, they don't compare to getting someone arrested, costing them millions of dollars, or leveling their entire life with a single revelation. With that said, put those sticky notes and witty quips away, because we're about to take a look at even more tales of revenge that wreaked nuclear levels of destruction. Major breakdown. Car mechanics don't have it easy. When they're not trying to work out how you poured wiper fluid in your oil fill pour for the 48th time, I'm so sorry, Bob. They have to deal with some deplorable customers, like this Reddit user's father did. Back in the early 2000s, this mechanic ran his own independent repair shop. One day, a man came in with an expensive-looking convertible, which needed its transmission fixed. It took a while to remove, disassemble, fix, and reassemble, but our mechanic got the job done. However, when it came time to pay up, Mr. Convertible suddenly couldn't afford it.
What?
He said he could pay half now and the other half in a week or so.
What?
Being a stand-up guy in a small town, our mechanic agreed. But a few weeks go by and Mr. Convertible is nowhere to be seen. After 2 months, our mechanic called him and asked when he'd be paying the rest of his bill. And here's the kicker. Mr. Convertible simply said he wouldn't be paying. There was nothing wrong with the repairs, but now that he had the car, he just didn't see why he should pay the rest. At first, our mechanic got mad, but then he decided to make an example out of Mr. Convertible. He called up a towing company, told them the situation, and explained that under state law, he had a mechanic's lien on the vehicle, which is the legal right to sell it for compensation of unpaid debt.
Damn!
The rules of this vary from state to state in America, but our mechanic was able to get the tow company to pick up the convertible and take it away. To his shop? Oh no, to the local recycling center. The car was crushed, scrapped, and the remnants sold to the center, making our mechanic his money back before Mr. Convertible could do anything. Obviously, he was furious and turned up to the repair shop with the state patrol the next day. However, after our mechanic explained the circumstances of the lien, the troopers declared it a civil matter, not a criminal one. And when Mr. Convertible tried to sue our mechanic, the judge dismissed the case. Moral of the story? Pay your mechanics. Unless you'd prefer your car scrap metal shaped.
Pay your bills.
Oh, brother. We all know that one person who has a habit of making someone else's special day all about them. Your birthday party? Well, they just got a promotion. Your big announcement? Well, they just bought a new car. Now don't worry though, you're not alone. One Reddit user, who we'll call Ben, had a younger brother called Todd, who just had to be the center of attention no matter the occasion. So much so that at their sister's baby shower, Todd and his girlfriend announced they were expecting. Like, come on, man, hold your own event. But he wasn't done there. The day before Ben's wedding, a receipt for an expensive ring fell out of Todd's pocket. It was clear he was planning to propose to his girlfriend during Ben's special day. Ben kicked him from the groom's party, but Todd started crying about how unfair it was.
No, throw him out. Why would you care?
And that he would never propose during someone else's wedding.
Throw him out. Throw him out.
So, Ben allowed him to come to the wedding as a guest, but warned him if he tried anything, he'd regret it. Sure enough, during his new wife's dad-daughter dance, Todd got down on one knee and proposed to his girlfriend in sight of everyone.
I beat that nigga ass, man. Hell nah.
But Ben wasn't angry. In fact, he was excited. Because, as Todd was stealing the spotlight, a heavily pregnant guest walked over and began to make a scene. She was screaming at Todd for lying to her, crying and claiming she was pregnant with his baby. She even called his phone, proving they'd been in contact. Distraught, Todd's girlfriend flung the ring down and left in tears. Ben was also in tears. From laughing. With the green light from his soon-to-be wife, he'd hired a woman to pretend to be Todd's side piece, asked her to be at the wedding and to act out if she saw him make the move to propose. Ben had even given her his number to make it convincing. And it was so convincing that Todd's girlfriend threw him out.
Damn!
Well, we can only hope that after all that, Todd figured out that he is not, in fact, life's main character. Park cold. When it comes to tales of revenge, it's always the ones that revolve around parking disputes that go the extra mile. Case in point, Reddit user Bright Rick has a parking revenge story that was served ice cold. Back in the early 2000s, Rick's family owned 2 apartment complexes out in the Chicago suburbs. They lived in some of the apartments, rented out the others, and owned a parking lot with a space for about 16 cars, more than enough for them and their tenants. But one day, cars started parking in the lot that didn't belong to them or their tenants. Rick blocked one of the cars in and called a tow company, when suddenly the owner came around and drove off over Rick's yard and bushes. Annoyed, Rick hired a local tow company and had them put up signs warning people that any car without a parking permit would be towed, and left it at that. But then, one freezing New Year's Eve, Rick arrived home to find every single space in the lot filled with cars that didn't belong to his family or tenants.
Damn!
There were so many cars that they were spilling out of the lot and lining the roads, blocking all the entrances to Rick's building.
Damn.
Someone was having a party, but he checked, and it was none of his residents. He rang the tow company, but they were too busy. So he decided to take matters into his own hands.
So I started flattening tires.
He quickly gathered up 3 of his lawn sprinklers, attached them to his laundry room faucets, and ran hot water through them. Being below 0 degrees out, the hot water stopped the hoses from freezing up. But once the water hit the cars and the sidewalks, thick layers of ice began to form.
Damn!
He moved each of the sprinklers every half hour or so, making sure the ice would get in between the window seals, handles, even the locks. Once every car was completely coated in a solid layer of ice, Rick packed everything up and went to bed. At 4 a.m., Rick was woken up by a group of very cold-looking people furiously pounding on his door and ringing his doorbell. They couldn't get into their cars for all the ice. Apparently, all these people had been told to park here by their friend who owned a building several blocks away. The very same guy who'd run over Rick's yard earlier that year. Rick just smiled and pointed out all the signs, telling them to move their cars or get towed, knowing full well they couldn't get into them. The cops showed up shortly after, laughing at the entire situation, before, with Rick's consent, ticketing every single illegally parked car, which were then all towed.
Damn!
What a way to bring in the new year. A business transition. In-laws. Some are good, some are bad, and some are downright rotten, as Reddit user LivingBunch6371 discovered. Some time ago, at just 18 years old, Living Bunch's sister-in-law came out as a trans woman.
Oh no!
Like the loving, caring Bunch6371 discovered. Some time ago, at just 18 years old, Living Bunch's sister-in-law came out as a trans woman. Like the loving, caring people they clearly were, her parents immediately threw her out. They denied her access to the car they'd bought.
Nah, bro, that's too much. If I had a son or a daughter and they came out as trans, I'm not gonna throw them out. They still gonna live with me.
Bought her and her money, which was in their joint account.
That's not okay.
So, late at night, she had to walk 8 miles to reach Living Bunch's house. Stunned, Living Bunch's husband tried to talk to their staunchly conservative parents, but they were resolute. Their now daughter was not welcome in their home because of who she was.
Come
And
on, bro.
all her possessions, including cash she'd earned working at a part-time job, were theirs now. This didn't sit well with Living Bunch.
Man, they ain't shit, bro. See, I don't like hearing stuff like this because I grew up in a really rough area. It was really hard. And I've been homeless myself. I was homeless for a long ass time. I was sleeping in the park, in the grass. I was sleeping at bus stops. I was sleeping on park benches for about 8 months. I don't take that lightly, bro. That's not cool.
Who
That's
loved
not
her
cool.
sister-in-law regardless of who she was.
Yeah.
She and her husband wanted to cut all ties with the in-laws,
Yup.
which suddenly gave her an idea. Her father-in-law was a small business owner, and his biggest account just so happened to be with Living Bunch's employer. She told her boss what happened, and after mulling on it, he agreed that if she could find another supplier offering a similar rate to her father-in-law, he'd close their account. This is where it got tough. Her father-in-law offered a great rate that was practically impossible to beat. But Living Bunch looked down every avenue she could, and eventually, 6 months later, she found a different company offering a similar rate. During this time, her father-in-law had begun major renovations on the family house. So to make sure this sudden loss of income would hit hardest, she waited an extra month when his renovations were well and truly underway before informing her boss.
See, this is karma. When you do something so horrifically shitty, you're going to get your get back.
Another month
I mean-
later, and the father-in-law's business was suddenly crushed.
Yup.
He had to scramble to find new clients and
Yup.
ended up having to sell the house to keep his business afloat.
Yup.
But because it was halfway renovated, it didn't sell for much.
Ooh.
It got so bad, both in-laws resorted to begging for money from other family members. But after the barbaric treatment of their own child, all of them resolutely said no.
Karma.
8 years down the line, and they're still clawing their way out of the karmic mess they got themselves into.
You say 8 years?
All of them resolutely said no. 8 years down the line, and they're still clawing their way out of the karmic mess they got themselves into.
Damn.
And to top it off, Living Bunch's sister-in-law is thriving now. Pretty ironic that if the in-laws hadn't kicked her out, they might still have a house.
Yup.
Greed the room. Nothing starts a family argument like the topic of inheritance. Seriously, if you want to cut Christmas short, just ask who's getting the lion's share of your relatives'
Maybe like
possessions when they
pause.
pass, and watch the entire day go up in flames. It's such a huge topic of contention that
I want
Reddit user
saucy. He
327 Nova was able to use it for some absolutely god-tier revenge several years ago. Nova had a greedy, manipulative, money-hungry cousin who leaned on their wealthy grandparents for every little thing. But Nova didn't care about the money. They just loved their grandparents and wanted to spend time with them. So, when their grandma passed away, Nova moved in with their grandpa to help take care of him. Nova's cousin didn't like this one bit, assuming they were trying to curry favor and steal the lion's share of the inheritance. One day, Nova came home to discover that one of their cousin's children had apparently found a loaded gun and was playing with it. A gun Nova's grandpa had entrusted to them. Nova knew their gun's safety and swore they'd never leave a gun just lying around, let alone one that was loaded. While their grandpa believed them, they asked Nova to move out until things had calmed down. Suddenly, it all made sense. Nova's cousin had framed them to get them out of the way, all in hopes of getting closer to their grandpa's wallet. Nova worked on fixing their relationship with their grandpa, but a month later, he sadly passed away. Nova was devastated. After the funeral, the will was read out, and that's when Nova noticed some very specific wording. It was complex, but it boiled down to, if anyone tries to claim more than they've been given, they get nothing. Suddenly, Nova had the perfect idea for a revenge trap. Later that day, they rang their cousin and casually mentioned all of their grandma's jewelry would be donated to a charity auction. Unable to resist, the cousin immediately drove over to their grandparents' house and began filling shoeboxes with all the jewelry they could get their hands on, hoping no one would miss it before it was donated. As they were doing so, Nova's father and the family lawyer walked into the house to do some final admin, catching the cousin red-handed trying to make off with 4 shoeboxes stuffed full of jewelry.
Damn!
Nova knew the lawyer was scheduled to visit that day and baited the trap so the cousin would show up at the most incriminating moment. Thanks to his own greed, the cousin never received a single penny of the inheritance. I don't know how much Nova was left, but that story is priceless. Disability Blowout. There's a special circle of hell for people who use disabled parking bays when they themselves aren't disabled. What? You think the disabled community doesn't have it hard enough already? Well, back in the early 90s, the father of Reddit user Drumhead was a disabled Florida resident who got their own back in style. They'd pulled up to their local store and were about to park in the handicap bay when a woman in a bright pink-red Porsche shot into it. He rolled down his window and told her he needed to park there, pointing to his disability placard. But she snapped back, "You don't look disabled," and walked into the store. First off, not all disabilities are visible. And second, that incredibly ignorant remark was about to cost her big time. Drumhead's dad got out of his car and removed the caps from all 4 of her tires before parking just far away enough to hear what was about to happen. After a while, the woman returned from the store, only to find all 4 of her tires completely flat. She began screaming that her Porsche had been vandalized and asked the store clerks to call the police. But when the police arrived, they immediately handed her a $250 ticket for being parked in a disabled bay without a placard and advised her she ring a tow company. Once they'd gone, Drumhead's dad wheeled around and shouted, "You don't look disabled, but your car sure does," before driving off. Now that is a next-level burn.
Petty! My nigga
Fair's
Petty!
fair.
Petty.
Taxi drivers do not have an easy job. From drunken passengers to unspeakable backseat antics, it's a pretty thankless career choice. However, Reddit user The Wendigo's grandmother, who used to be a taxi driver, didn't suffer no fools. Back in the 1970s, she was a cab driver in Newcastle, England. One night, she picked up a fare and dropped him off. But when she asked for her money, the guy tried to cheese it. Unfortunately for him, this woman wasn't going home empty-handed.
Knees don't grow
Seeing
at all.
him trying to make a
seen-
dash for it, she hit the gas and rolled over the guy's foot before parking on top of it. Screaming and crying, the attempted fee dodger still refused to pay her. It wasn't long before the police showed up, and after explaining the situation, the police, no sympathy for the guy, reached into his pocket and gave her the money she was owed. They then asked her politely to get off the guy's foot before sending her on her way. But did her night end there? Not by a long shot. A few hours later, she's waiting in a taxi rank for another fare when 2 men walk up to her window, supporting a hobbling man. The thief from before. It took him a moment to recognize her, but when he did, oh, did the insults flow. Graciously, she then explained to his friends that he'd unsuccessfully tried to mug her off before. She then offered to take them, but this fee thief would have to take another cab.
Yeah?
Appalled by their pal's behavior, the 2 got in, leaving the thief slack-jawed on the sidewalk. She then enacted the final part of her revenge by getting down and yelling to cabs down the rest of the rank that no one should take the fee thief before driving off.
That's funny.
Oh, I bet that was one walk of shame he'll never forget.
Waka.
Don't mess with grandma. There are sleazes, there are scumbags, and then there are people who prey on the elderly, like this next pair of despicable idiots. According to this story posted on Reddit, someone used to know a sweet old lady from their local church. She was a retired nurse, had never married, and had no children, but did have family in the form of her niece and nephew. One day, she suffered a major heart attack and was rushed to hospital.
Aw,
She
I hope
wasn't
lived.
expected to survive. But before she had officially kicked the bucket, her niece and nephew decided to act like she had. They rocketed up to her apartment and began loading up her possessions, including all her fine crystal and silverware. The only problem was that despite her fatal prognosis, she survived. And when she returned home, her furniture, utensils, even her dishes were all gone. Who would steal from an old woman like that? They may as well have taken her purse from the hospital bed. Well, her neighbors wasted no time informing her they'd seen her greedy niece and nephew carting everything away. They denied it furiously, and she never pressed charges. A few years later, she finally did pass on, but after her heart attack, she'd made a few adjustments to her will. Prior to the thievery incident, everything was set to be left to her beloved niece and nephew. Now, they were each to receive just $1, and the rest of her estate would be going to the church. How much was the estate? Oh, just a small, humble $9 million.
What?
Yeah, hope the dishes were worth it, you ungrateful dolts.
What? $9 million? Yo!
I bet that was one walk of shame he'll never forget. Don't mess with Grandma. There are sleazes, there are scumbags, and then there are people who prey on the elderly, like this next pair of despicable idiots. According to this story posted on Reddit, someone used to know a sweet old lady from their local church. She was a retired nurse, had never married, and had no children, but did have family in the form of her niece and nephew. One day, she suffered a major heart attack and was rushed to hospital. She wasn't expected to survive, but before she had officially kicked the bucket, her niece and nephew decided to act like she had. They rocketed up to her apartment and began loading up her possessions, including all her fine crystal and silverware. The only problem was that despite her fatal prognosis, she survived. And when she returned home, her furniture, utensils, even her dishes were all gone. Who would steal from an old woman like that? They may as well have taken her purse from the hospital bed. Well, her neighbors wasted no time informing her they'd seen her greedy niece and nephew carting everything away. They denied it furiously, and she never pressed charges. A few years later, she finally did pass on, but after her heart attack, she'd made a few adjustments to her will.
Oh my God, that is so crazy.
Well, her neighbors wasted no time informing her they'd seen her greedy niece and nephew carting everything away. They denied it furiously, and she never pressed charges.
Wow.
A few years later, she finally did pass on, but after her heart attack, she'd made a few adjustments to her will. Prior to the thievery incident, everything was set to be left to her beloved niece and nephew.
Damn.
Now, they were each to receive just $1, and the rest of her estate would be going to the church.
$1?
How much was the estate? Oh, just a small, humble $9 million.
Nigga.
Yeah, hope the dishes were worth it, you ungrateful dolts. Free pizza ploy. Did you know I used to be a pizza boy? Yeah, it was a pretty sweet gig. My boss was nice, the pay was okay, and I got free pizza every shift.
Hell
I
yeah.
was living the dream. But that dream can quickly turn into a nightmare if the customers act up, like Reddit user DemonMaster2162 discovered. Back in 2004, this fellow pizza boy was delivering a pizza to a house when a woman opened the door in her birthday suit. Bamboozled, Demon Master tried to remain composed and just told her the price so that she would pay him and he could leave. But she refused, claiming that because she'd given him a show, she wanted free pizza.
Excuse me? You don't think just because I saw your whack ass pussy, you supposed to get free pizza, bitch?
That dream can quickly turn into a nightmare if the customers act up, like Reddit user DemonMaster2162 discovered. Back in 2004, this fellow pizza boy was delivering a pizza to a house when a woman opened the door in her birthday suit. Bamboozled, Demon Master tried to remain composed and just told her the price so that she would pay him and he could leave. But she refused, claiming that because she'd given him a show, she wanted free pizza.
You think a gander at your masculine ass pussy means that I'm supposed to give you pizza, bitch? If I show up to the door and you buck naked, my dick don't get hard, bitch, you did nothing for me. You better suck a nigga dick or something. You know what I mean? You want some free pizza out this bitch.
Calmly, he told her he couldn't give away
Fuck
pizza
no,
for
bitch.
free because he wasn't the manager. She then went full-blown Karen and demanded to speak to his manager.
What? I demand to speak. What you gonna tell him? I just opened the door buck naked and your pizza man won't give me the pizza for free. What type of establishment are you guys running here? I demand to speak to a manager. It's the power of the pussy, bro. What are you gonna do?
Apparently feeling taken advantage of, even though she was the one who answered the door without any clothes on. Right. So she called up the delivery place, explained the situation, and smugly put the phone down. Moments later, Demon Master got a call on his cell phone from his manager telling him to come back with the pizza and call the cops. Why? For failure to pay? Nope, says his manager, for
indecent exposure, bitch!
Indecent exposure. So, in front of Karen, Demon Master called the cops. She thought he was bluffing, but when they showed up and took his statement, she panicked and denied everything.
What?
But after the manager backed up his statement because she'd called him to demand free pizza for being butt naked, she eventually admitted to lying to the cops, aka a very serious crime of perjury. Here's hoping she didn't try to persuade the judge to let her go for free. I don't think the courts are ready for that show.
Moral of this story is if you want some free shit, bitch, you better suck a nigga dick or something. Y'all think just having pussy you get free shit? You better use that shit on a nigga. The fuck is wrong with these hoes?
Boy toys. The only thing that feels worse than being cheated on is meeting the person you're being cheated on with. Really gets the inadequacy complex going. However, Reddit user PurePepper3666 had the opposite of this problem. Several years ago, Pepper's girlfriend told him she was cheating on him, and to rub salt in the wound, she informed him that in order to still be friends, he would just need to grow up and deal with it. Initially, because he did still want to be her friend, Pepper
he was depressed, yeah.
said yes. But she kept sending him pictures of her and her new boyfriend being all lovey-dovey together like a complete sadist. Hurt and depressed, Pepper tried to get on with his life in a grounded and healthy way. What, with therapy? Ha. No, Tinder. But while he was swiping left and right, he came across a very familiar face. Lo and behold, it was his ex-girlfriend's new boyfriend, the same one she'd been cheating on him with, and the one she was still dating. Realizing he could enact a little revenge, he swiped right and matched with him. The two began talking, and he revealed he was bisexual, and also he had no idea who Pepper was. Their conversations became ever more flirty, and after a few weeks and a couple of dates, he was falling deeply in love with Pepper, while still in a relationship with his girlfriend. Eventually, Pepper told him that if he was serious about their relationship, then he needed to leave his girlfriend for good. Next thing you know, Pepper was getting messages from his ex, utterly distraught, saying she'd just been dumped and that she regretted ever leaving him. To land the final blow, Pepper sent her a selfie of him and her now ex-boyfriend looking all lovey-dovey together with the message, "Your boyfriend? You mean this guy?" After that, he went full scorched earth and dumped his new boyfriend as well. It was all an act. He hated cheaters and figured he could get back at both of them by playing them against one another, and boy, had it worked. Moral of this story, cheaters never change their spots.
This nigga was gay for revenge? What are you? I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to comment, like, and or subscribe. It's your boy BlastphamousHD. Twisms.